All right. Last week was a little silly, but this week's probably can be better. Got a little bit of a Chris Harris shirt, a different one this time. I think everything's ready to go. Super smooth. So now we know who the grown-ass men are, but some frat boys still remain. Will they last? And how long? And who will get that flat tummy tea contract on Instagram? Those questions and more tonight on this special episode of... That's my friend Neil. Hey, what's up, Ringer? Yeah, man. What's going on? Yeah, I just watched it. Absolutely. Oh, you're there with Chris? Oh, put him on speaker. Hey, C-Money, what's going on, man? Yeah, so what's up? Oh, you want to know if I think you'll get your ring back from Claire and Dan? Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's possible. Why? You kind of tight for the money, or you just like to get it back before you have to give one to Tayshia? Well, yeah, I understand. What are you guys doing anyway? Playing Battleship? Oh, that's fun. That's cool. Hey, are the three of us still on for 80s movie night this weekend? Okay, cool. Whose turn is it to pick? Neil's? All right, Neil, what are we watching? Dirty Dancing? Really? Okay. I mean, yeah, I love that one. I mean, he might get the ring back. Sorry about that interruption. So actually, this week's episode of The Bachelorette is surprisingly normal. It even starts off with a normal kind of love song type date. We've seen it before at Capitol Records. We've seen it with the likes of Richard Marx. And it includes Bennett, who used to rock a fresh beat apparently in middle school. So he decides he's going to rap his song to Tayshia, and he does. And he thinks it's clever, but it's actually sort of sounds like a Pringles commercial from 1986. It's actually not that clever. DeMar is fairly clever with his song on the guitar. He can't play the guitar, but he tries very hard and does a decent job. But Ivan is actually the real star with the heartfelt song of sorts to Tayshia. She's clearly touched by it, clearly enjoys it. And Ivan actually wins a little mini one-on-one date with Tayshia. Pretty cool prize. Now, while that date's going on, we get a little preview of the Noah versus Bennett drama that's going to take place later. So Bennett's basically like, hey, Noah, how's life without a mustache? And Noah's like, pretty good because I got this rose, Bennett. So that's just a little preview, just a little tasty taste. But meanwhile, Ivan and Tayshia are having a pretty normal date. Ivan talks about how his brother went to prison, which is a sad story, and they kind of connect over that. And then they talk about the George Floyd protests and how they're both have parents from different races, so they bond over that. And really, it's just kind of very touching. They actually connect like human beings and have things in common that are really important. So actual great date here. And then they have to eat a giant bowl of ice cream that's seriously like Guinness Book of World Records type stuff. And it's like dripping onto the table, and it's kind of gross, but they slurp up some ice cream, and then they watch a movie together as kind of the end of their date. And it's not really a movie. It's like home movies of Tayshia when she was a kid. So it's just really kind of touching and an actual real date. Good job, Bachelorette. And the next date is a sort of fear factor type date. They call it Truth or Dare, but it's more heavily focused on the dare portion of the date. Becca K, former Bachelorette, stops by with her friend Sydney to help administer the dares. How exactly they're helping is completely unclear. They pair up the guys into teams of two, and they have to perform a series of dares. The first dare is a smoothie drinking dare, where they drink like tomatoes and apples mixed with cow intestines. So certainly very much like a fear factor callback. Becca and the gang are watching through binoculars and cheering on the guys to chug, 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 and wondering aloud if they will vomit. So it's certainly a very mature date for grown-ass men. In the next dare, they need to ask Chris Harrison to sign their ass. Yes. And so when they meet Chris Harrison, he's like having a crab leg and champagne lunch. So a little comedic touch from C Money. The next dare, they need to do get on the hotel intercom and pretend to have an orgasm. They choose to sort of imitate a woman's orgasm. I'm not sure if that was what they were supposed to do. And then the final dare is they have to eat a habanero pepper and propose. And everybody kind of does the same old canned proposal from the moment I met you, blah, blah, blah. And they try and really do it like seriously, but it's really pretty lame. Then it's time for the truth party. that's like the after party, and this is the detective Tayshia kind of part of the episode where she can ask them anything they want. So then Bennett talks about his engagement, and Tayshia's like, oh, tell me more. And he's like, well, my parents really didn't get along, and I just kind of knew it was the wrong thing, so I called it off, and I have no regrets. It's kind of a weird story, but it actually goes over super well. And Bennett walks away from this, I would say the word is smug. He's very convinced that he's going to get the group date rose. Then Blake gets asked, what about your ex? What would your ex say about you? He's like, hey, all my exes love me. Everybody gets along with me. And then finally, Zach, for some reason, gets to be in a hot tub with Tayshia, which is kind of unfair. And they make out a lot, and Zach just kind of hits a home run. And so when Tayshia is giving out the group date rose, she kind of calls out Bennett, who's sure he's going to get the rose. But ultimately, she's like, Bennett, you did great, but I'm giving my rose to Zach. And Bennett is clearly miffed. And now we have kind of an unusual segment I'll call kind of the secret missions segment of the show. So both Ed and Ben are about to run secret missions to go to Tayshia's little apartment villa and kind of plead their case of why they should stay. So Ben's beating himself up. Why? Well, because on the last date, he kind of asked for some time and Tayshia told him it was too late. So he's really been beating himself up about this. It really doesn't seem like a big deal, but he decides he needs to go to Tayshia's villa to talk to her about it. And then Ed's also going to talk to her, and they make it seem like it's all going to happen at the same time, but Ben arrives first and they have this conversation where he apologizes again for what we're really not sure. But she kind of says, hey, it seems like you've got your guard up. He's like, my guard is up. She's like, my guard's up. But they do kind of clearly like each other. So she forgives him and they kind of make out. And then we cut to Ed, who is knocking on a door. And we kind of think, okay, maybe it's going to be Tayshia that answers. But actually, Chris Harrison answers and says, again, little comedic touch for C Money. Hey, it's 2:30 in the morning. What are you doing here? Well, what are you doing up at 2:30 in the morning, Chris Harrison? It's sort of unusual, but then he invites Ed in and they have a glass of wine, and it's really just kind of a comedic touch and honestly seems completely fake, but that's what happens. Meanwhile, he says, hey, do you know where you're going? He says, yeah, I do. And then we hear a knock again, and we see Tayshia and Ben inside the villa, and we kind of think, oh, maybe Ed's going to interrupt. But no, it's room service delivering champagne and strawberries. And so Ben has planned that they're going to have champagne and strawberries. So he really thought this was going to go pretty well, apparently. And it does, and they make out a ton, and clearly everything's going well. Meanwhile, Ed just never shows up. So was this just some kind of goofball stunt concocted by the producers? I think maybe so. Lastly, we've got some typical kind of pre-rose ceremony cocktail party drama, mainly involving Noah. So it's Bennett versus Noah again in a stare down, and Bennett's kind of like, hey, what are you going to do with your rose? And Noah's kind of like, hey, Bennett, guess what? Even though I got a rose, I'm going to spend more time with Tayshia. And he's like, are you kidding me? That means I'll get less time with Tayshia. And he's like, I'm not kidding you. And he actually pulls Tayshia aside, and she's like, how are things going? And he's like, well, everybody's kind of pissed that I jumped into the steel cage with my jeans and my mustache and got this rose when I wasn't even invited on the date. And she's like, really? They're upset? And he's like, yeah, they're really upset. In fact, they even said that you just gave me the rose to shake things up and make a splash. And she's like, really? They're actually saying that? He's like, really? They are saying it. And she believes it 100%, and then takes everybody into this kind of interrogation room and is like, hey, everybody, I heard my authenticity is being questioned. I don't like it. And if any of you all want to be walked out, I'll be happy to walk you out right now, and storms out. So everybody's kind of like, what? They're kind of looking around, and there's just silence. And then they're like, what happened? And then Noah's like, well, I know what happened. I was actually the last one to speak to her, and I caused the whole thing. They're like, really? And they're pissed, and I think kind of rightfully so. And then Bennett talks about how he's breastfeeding Noah and he's babysitting Noah. And it's kind of the typical frat boy bravado. But anyway, it's time for the rose ceremony. I don't think there's any real drama about this rose ceremony. We're maybe kind of wondering about, will Ed get cut? But everything's kind of already decided. Ed does make it through, and it's Joe and Kenny and Chasen that get cut. And how about that? The episode ends with just a rose ceremony, like an old school episode of The Bachelor / Bachelorette. So pretty cool. Anyway, that's the end of this episode recap. Kind of just a normal episode, less embarrassing than all the episodes so far this season. So enjoyed recapping it. Stay tuned for the next recap next time. Thanks for watching. I'll be your Mr. Right Girl.